Within its first 10 years, Nicholls would grow from a junior college under the direction of the LSU system with an initial class of 161 students into a 4-year state institution. Certainly, there was much to be done during that time to convert former sugarcane and rice fields along Bayou Lafourche into a real college campus. There was the obvious pressing need for classrooms, buildings, and the roads to provide access to them, but development during this period went beyond the physical infrastructure requirements of a college. The school's first administration, faculty, and staff were starting with a blank slate. As a result, they had to design all manner of processes and policies. Some had obvious and direct links to the basic functions of a college, such as getting students registered each semester or providing them with teachers and academic materials. Others were more esoteric, like finding ways to instill a sense of school spirit and belonging among the students at the fledgling institution. Starting in 1951, the ROTC program would be a central feature at Nicholls in its early years. In that first year, an estimated 65% of the male students were members of the Cadet Corps. Some female students served as sponsors. The campus had an outdoor shooting range, and bugle calls blared over the campus public address system. Members of the unit would march at statewide functions. Under President Charles C. Elkins, Nicholls would continue to mature during a period when gas was selling for 18 cents per gallon, when troops marched off to the Korean War, when the Supreme Court issued its Brown versus Education ruling, and when Elvis appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. Through those years on campus, various traditional aspects of college life would appear, such as mascots, athletics, or intramurals. Some events were intended to provide an air of sophistication befitting a center of higher learning, others less so. By 1958, Nicholls was ready for its first group of 4-year graduates. During its second decade, the Nicholls campus began to take on a shape recognizable today, particularly when viewed from the Bayou side. Students from the previous decade could still find some of the traditional activities they had created. The school was developing academically, with favorite teachers and classes. Instructors were covering the usual subjects from the arts and sciences, like speech, music, math, biology, or chemistry. There were also areas of study with more practical daily application, but there were already subtle changes in the educational technology found at Nicholls. Lecture rooms were being replaced with functioning workspaces. Recorded sound and images were becoming important teaching tools. Early computers were also arriving on campus. There were challenges. There were national tragedies, such as the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. There were setbacks at Nicholls as well. But the trend was generally upward, with students developing a full-fledged system of self-governance, electing officers for various posts based on a 2-party voting system. Overcoming hurdles had been a core value at Nicholls from the beginning. In 1948, it had become the first post-secondary school in the state to provide free bus transportation. Other schools would follow suit. The practice continued until 1963. Nicholls was ready for the next step: campus housing, though sometimes the school had to be creative to provide it. Students were also adding dimension to their extracurricular activities. In 1960, who's who among students in American universities and colleges would for the first time recognize Nicholls students, and the school would create the title of Mr. Nicholls. Freshman pajama parties and Western Week events were still big draws. Nicholls would celebrate a significant milestone, its 25th anniversary. Under the direction of its second president, Dr. Vernon F. Galliano, the school, which had achieved university status in 1970, celebrated the occasion with a host of events. By the 1970s, athletics had evolved significantly. There were more key college sports like football, baseball, and basketball, but there were others, like golf. There were also health and PE courses and intramural events for those with an athletic inclination. And while the dress and hairstyles of students had changed quite a bit since the early days of school, pirogue races were still widely popular. And there were plenty of other things to engage students beyond the classroom. Fraternities had arrived at Nicholls in 1966 when a colony of Phi Kappa Theta was established on campus. By the mid-1970s, there were more than 10 fraternities and sororities at Nicholls. There were also an interfraternity council and a Panhellenic council. The Nicholls Players and Theater Department provides students with the opportunity to take part in elaborate stage productions of musicals and dramas. The 1970s were a turbulent time. The voting age dropped from 21 to 18. President Richard Nixon was forced to resign. Those associated with Nicholls could take comfort in the familiar landmarks like arena registration, homecoming events, or Western Week activities. But there are also signs that change would come here as well. Nicholls was a hotspot in the 1980s. During this period, major musical groups at the height of their success would tour the country performing on college campuses. Nicholls was able to book groups Kool and the Gang or Chicago, who performed in Thibodeau before thousands of fans. Concerts were not the only source of musical entertainment. KNSU began in March 1968 as KFTN. Greek organizations had matured with well-established events of their own, as had various other social and academic organizations. Students in the 1980s could benefit from the construction projects completed during the 1970s, including the IO swimming pool, Ellender Memorial Library, and Guidry Stadium, as well as from extracurricular pastimes established by previous classes. But there were also new activities. Dr. Donald Iho, who would become the third president of the school, instituted the midterm breakfast tradition, where administration, faculty, and staff served students pancakes and sausage during the week of midterms. There were new sports teams on campus as well, some of them amassing impressive records of success. Older technology on campus was getting replaced. The change would affect everything from how people communicated to the way students registered for classes themselves. In the following decade would hit its next big milestone, its 50th anniversary. Once again, there would be much to celebrate. Nicholls had matured as a center of higher learning. It had made a commitment to national, specialized accreditation for academic programs. During the period, all programs on campus for which there were established accreditation had earned the distinction. It had developed widely respected programs in biology and the College of Business Administration. Both received widespread acclaim. Biology, Business Administration each offered advanced degrees. While some of the older traditions, like Western Week or pajama dances, had faded away or were less popular, there were still plenty of activities. There were musical performances, speech forums, where students debated the topics of the day, crawfish day, rides and foods, homey dorms, and places to relax and/or study. There were challenges and the need to improve some aspects of the infrastructure, but in light what some students and faculty were dealing with on the world side, these seemed minor. Technology was playing an even larger role on campus. Computers were no longer the tool of the registrar's office or specialized courses. Even classes in the humanities were using them more often. The nature of students themselves was also changing, with a larger percentage of non-traditional students returning to campus to upgrade their skills. While the campus was still young in many ways, there was much that needed to be done to upgrade facilities. Nicholls launched a campaign to construct new buildings and get rid of those which outlived their usefulness. There was also the need to construct facilities for programs which had not been in place in the past. The Colonel community banded together under the leadership of his fourth president, Dr. Stephen Hulbert, to take on these tasks in the face of daunting challenges. The state and Nicholls faced years of budget cuts, driving up the cost of education for students and requiring that employees go without raises. Students stood up not only for their school, they were also taking on broader social issues. Never shy about voicing their opinions on topics for they felt strongly, students were also willing to give their own administration a gentle nudge. Undaunted by the difficult financial times, the school continued to make strides forward, adding new sports, serving as the social and cultural center for the region, making special guests feel at home. The community took the time to recognize those who had given so much. It developed new special events and celebrated success from the classroom to the sports fields. Nicholls had survived very tough times since the late 2000s. There had been years of budget cuts and falling enrollment as a result of the ever-increasing cost of attending college. Some programs were no longer available to students. Some faculty were no longer on campus. But the tide was beginning to change. Under Dr. Bruce Murphy, the fifth Nicholls president, the university went through its review for overall regional accreditation and passed with no recommendations. Specialized accreditations were also maintained. Thanks in large measure to various QEP initiatives, Nicholls saw its retention rates continue to improve. As a result of these efforts and intensified recruiting programs like Scholars Night and Colonel Connect, Nicholls began to see enrollment increases. While the budget was still far from robust, the administration was able to find ways to offer employees one-time revenue increases. The school also began to see a return to success on the athletic fields. New academic programs were being added to the catalog. In spring 2018, Dr. J. Clune returned to take over the reins of his alma mater with an ambitious agenda.